Greetings, travelers. Welcome back to Tales from the Enchanted Forest with your hosts, Fox and Squirrel.
Hello.
That's right, Squirrel, aka Mr. Fox, because he has so kindly joined me in Sparrow's absence.
Are you flustered by my good looks?
I am very flustered by your good looks. I don't think I've ever had you in my studio before.
It's very high tech, I must say.
Yes, it is. So he has so very kindly offered to join us and listen to part 1 of our Trojan series. And you know what? I think Squirrel is a very good sit-in for Sparrow in this case, because mythology is something that we've always listened to together and we've talked about and we've been obsessed with since the moment we met. We listened to the entire Myths and Legends podcast series. We've listened to Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series, the audiobooks, and we've listened to Stephen Fry's audiobooks, I think all of them except for the Odyssey. And of course, we are endlessly hyperfixated on Jorge Rivera Herron's epic The Musical. So I've just been a weird child who's been obsessed with this since pretty much my school days, but is there a specific reason why you've had a particular interest in folklore and mythology?
I've always liked fantasy, so it appeals to that. But also, I like seeing how stories evolve over time and how they influence behavior. And obviously, Greek mythology is one of the most famous polytheistic things out there. And it's interesting to see how the beliefs have changed over time and how stories evolve.
And I think out of all of the different things that we've done, like we've discussed a lot of folklore, we've read a lot of it, we've read fiction, nonfiction, like Stephen Fry's series, and we've also listened to the musicals. Is there a preferred method or like medium you enjoy? Because I really, really, really like Epic the Musical. I think it was such a great delivery of the story of Odysseus in a way that was fun and informative, but also so catchy.
Well, you know me, I listen to audiobooks pretty much permanently, so listening of any kind. I do love Epic the Musical, but I also really enjoy watching the animatics while listening to it. But yeah, listening all the way.
Yes. And is there any specific myth that really stands out to you that you just remember as being absolutely insane? Or they
I've
all
always
just
thought it weird to be born from someone's thigh, to be honest.
Oh, we will be talking a lot about Zeus today. So that is Zeus, right? Who was born from Zeus's thigh?
I believe it was Dionysus was born.
Ah, yes. I'm mixing him up with Athena because she was born from his headache, from his mind. Like she split his head open. So there are lots and lots of Greek myths out there. My favorite, however, is the Trojan War. I feel like the Trojan War is a spider web of stories. Like one train of thought sends you into a side quest, into a different side quest, into a diplomatic mission, and then you have to track down 4 different family curses to figure out who's to blame. And this is a story that we've always wanted to do on this podcast, but like with the Persian Shahnameh, it's just such a great undertaking to do it all at once and to do it justice. And so we have broken it down into 3 different parts. We will be covering a lot of the pre-war information. So today we really get into the House of Sparta, a lot of Zeus's background and Zeus's involvement and his children. Second part, we will talk a lot about the Atreides, so the House of Atreus, where we talk about Agamemnon, Menelaus, and the House of Troy. And the final part, we will actually get to the war. But there are 2 specific characters that we're really, really going to focus on, and they are the sisters Helen and Clytemnestra of Sparta. So Helen and Clytemnestra, they represent 2 different ideals of women's agency. While Helen is often seen as a character that is quite passive and possibly under Aphrodite's spell, Clytemnestra is often seen as the vengeful mother. And for today's episode, we'll be really focusing on the prelude with Helen of Troy. Because for a woman whose beauty supposedly launched 1,000 ships, for a woman whose name has basically become synonymous with the Trojan War, she somehow barely gets any attention. The Trojan War seems to be about everything except for Helen. Bethany Hughes even writes in her book that for someone known for her beauty, Helen is remarkably faceless. And I think this is kind of like an Eve situation, where Helen is the red herring and the justification the Greeks needed to sail across the sea and, air quotes, rescue her, when in reality they all wanted glory, wealth, power, and the gods really just wanted a proxy war with their playthings. I think the way I think of this sometimes is it's a giant D&D game with the gods, and they're controlling all the different characters and being like, no, that's my favorite, you can't kill him.
Who's the DM?
I want to say Zeus.
It's got to be Zeus.
I feel like it is, yeah, because I feel like the other gods kind of split down the middle, but because Zeus has children on either side.
Plus half the NPCs are from him.
Yeah. But I feel like because half of the, like, most people, we'll get into this, but most people involved, like all the heroes, they're related to Zeus in some way. So he's watching all his children fight, and he sometimes lets some of the gods intervene where other times he doesn't let them intervene. And so it's interesting to imagine Zeus as this DM. And to be honest, the Trojan War kind of symbolizes the final great clash of the Greek heroes. In Stephen Fry's retelling, and I love Stephen Fry, but he covers it up into these different segments where he does mythos, where he talks a lot about how the gods came to be, kind of the first myths, the first legends.
And the Titans.
And how the Olympians came to be, and some of the core stories about the Olympians. And then we see the shift into heroes, where he talks about Perseus and Theseus and Heracles, and he goes into kind of this era of where the heroes are the ones.
Demigods.
And the demigods, yeah, because a lot of the heroes are demigods. And then, of course, we have Troy. And this is the final great clash. Odysseus obviously does go on his Odyssey, but I kind of put Troy and the Odyssey together as like one big story, because he's kind of the final story part of this mosaic. But I think that this is where the Greeks start to kind of shift away from the Greek myths. And then we have Aeneas, who escapes, and he starts the foundations for Rome. Then we have the Roman Empire and kind of the decline of the Hellenistic. So that's why I really like the story. I mean, also, I really love side quests and rabbit holes, and the Trojan War is full of those.
It's more side quests and rabbit holes than it is actual main quest.
Yeah, you will see, because, I mean, part 1 and part 2 are just side quests. Like, we're tracing down grandfathers, great-grandfathers to be like, so this family's cursed because this person did this, and then this other person did this, but he's involved with this god, and this god did this. So, a lot of that. Without further ado, we present the first part of the Trojan War series. Except I kind of lied. Before we go anywhere near the Trojan War, we have to start with the story of Zeus and an epic called the Cyrpia. The Cyrpia is unfortunately in fragments, and the contents of it are very heavily debated. However, in one interpretation of the Cyrpia, Zeus is wondering how to cut down the number of humans on Earth, like Thanos. He wants to cut them in half. He's like, there's too many of them. I'm sick of them.
So Thanos with the gauntlet's more powerful than Zeus because he can just snap his fingers.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, Zeus could just get rid of them. Like, he could just send a biblical flood and everyone's gone. But that would not be interesting enough. And
playthings is the good word here, yes.
Yes. So there are some issues here because it's debated why he wants to cut down humankind. Some people think that the human race has just grown too enlightened and they don't really too advanced for Zeus. They're starting to forget their sacrifices, their roots. In other cases, Gaia herself tells Zeus, like, hey, there's too many people, like, physically on me, and her load needs to be lightened. And so he confers with Themis, the goddess of divine prophecy, who tells him 2 prophecies. The one that is not really contested is the prophecy of the sea nymph Thetis, whose son will be greater than his father. And there is another prophecy about the birth of a child of Zeus who will bring about great calamity. And this child is Helen. But again, like with Greek mythology, everything is contested. So it could be that he was like, he wanted Helen to be born to bring about the Trojan War. It could also be that he simply just had eyes on her mom, Leda. So Leda was the queen of Sparta and the wife of King Tyndareus of Sparta. And unfortunately for her, professional adulterer, king of the gods, Zeus, really wanted her. And what else is new about that?
Yeah, that's how half the stories begin.
Yep. Zeus wanted to get laid is how half these stories begin. However, Zeus's wife, Hera, was watching him like a hawk at this point because she is so tired of all these demigods running around, all of these heroes running around, all of these Olympians running around who are all children of Zeus. And so Zeus has to get a little bit creative. But I mean, it's not really creative for Greek gods. He just decides to transform himself into an animal.
It's not even his first romp as an animal. Just a different animal.
No. It seems to be the go-to for the Greek gods when they want to have a sleepover with somebody. They're like, I'm just gonna turn myself into an animal. He decides to transform himself into a swan, and he waddles up to Leda while she's bathing. And from this very, very strange divine encounter came eggs. And this is the problem. Maybe there was one egg, maybe there were two eggs, maybe there were no eggs at all, depending on the version. Greek mythology is not known for its consistency. Have you heard the story of Leda and the Swan?
Mm-hmm.
How many eggs do you think? How many eggs have you heard in your version?
Well, I've only heard it usually in the same vein as this, where multiple sources are stated, and it's not conclusive, so I can't give a useful answer here.
Well, because when I first heard this story, I think maybe like the PG version or something, it was just like, oh, there was one egg and from it came Helen, but there are more children to account for than just Helen. So in some versions, she had two eggs, each containing a child of Zeus and a child of Tyndareus, because the same night that she waddled in the pool with Zeus, she also waddled in the pool with her husband. And so in one egg were Castor and Pollux, and in the other was Helen and her sister Clytemnestra. Or in some cases, one egg had the divine children of Zeus, so Pollux and Helen, while the other had the mortal children of Tyndareus, Castor, and Clytemnestra. Or we could go into a completely different myth where Zeus was not even seducing Leda at all, and he was going after the goddess Nemesis, who kept transforming herself into animals to get away from him, but he turned himself into a swan or a goose, not quite clear, and the rest was history. Nemesis did not want this egg, and so she gave it to Leda, and from that egg came Helen. So right from the start, we have Helen with a divine birth, with a divine father, the king of the gods, who at this point in time really wants to bring down man.
Give us an answer to the age-old question. What came first, the Helen or the egg?
The Spartans really, the egg is such a big part of Helen's story. In Sparta, you can see, they have eggshells that are claimed to be the eggshells that Helen came from. Yeah, so
that's odd.
So this idea of this divine birth, this divine woman, this divine demigod woman, and I really like this story because we have a female demigod here in this case, and in the heroes we have Atalanta, and we have Medea, and we have a little bit about Circe, but we don't really have this female demigod who has such outwardly masculine energy during a war like this. So the first part of Helen's story starts with her childhood. She grew up in Sparta, and what's interesting about Sparta compared to Athens is that Spartan women were educated and given training alongside men. So Helen probably had an active childhood. And this is where things get uncomfortable, because we need to turn to our least favorite Greek hero ever, Theseus. We hate this man on this podcast.
There are quite a few who would vie for that title.
Yeah, but Theseus, we are a Theseus-hating podcast. Squirrel, you have to get on board with that. This is not a Theseus. When we did the episode on Orpheus and Eurydice, and I think we'll probably do one in the future about Heracles, the consistent thing is that Theseus sucks.
Which particular dude is it that makes him the most sucky of all the suckers?
So this is what he does to Helen. So Theseus and his bestie, they decide that they deserve these, and they're older now. These are after their hero stories have finished. They decide that they deserve daughters of Zeus as wives. And they're like, well, we're great. Why don't we have great wives? And so they decide they're going to kidnap two daughters of Zeus. They're going to kidnap Helen, who was around 12 years old at the time, for Theseus, and they were going to kidnap Persephone.
As in Lady of the Underworld.
Persephone. As in Lady of the Underworld, Queen of the Underworld.
Not a fantastic decision.
One of currently in the Underworld, Persephone. Yeah, the amount of the amount of brain cells I have is not few enough to put together what this plan is.
Of all the people to kidnap from, one of the big three Greek gods, maybe not the best idea.
No. especially since she was in the underworld at the time when they went to go kidnap her. So they literally had to go to Hades' domain to try and kidnap the queen of Hades. This is where things are different depending on which author you choose to read and which writer, which playwright. Because in some of the stories, Helen was taken by Theseus right away to his mother, and then they went to go get Persephone. So they left Helen and they went. That went about as well as you think. So Theseus and his bestie are in Hades trying to get Persephone. And meanwhile, Castor and Pollux, Helen's brothers, who are also great heroes, march on Athens with an army, storm the city, rescue her, and raze the city to the ground.
You know someone's in for a rough life when they are first kidnapped at 12.
Yeah. So Castor and Pollux do come and rescue her, and Theseus and Peleus are in the underworld looking for Persephone because they just waltz in. Of course, they end up trapped there, and I don't know if you've heard about the trapping, the way they've been trapped, but basically they get stuck, their butts get stuck on these seats right near the entrance because they don't get very far and they can't go anywhere. And they're there until Heracles eventually does rescue Theseus. Peleus is stuck in the underworld, eternal torment for being apparently stupid, like just completely stupid, brain damaged.
I'm on board with that being punishment fitting of the crime.
Yes. And so when Theseus returns back home, obviously Athens is razed to the ground because Castor and Pollux did not take too kindly to their young underage sister being kidnapped. But the main point from this part of the story is that already at the age of 12, Helen understood the way the world worked. She is stripped of her childhood before it even begins, and she understands that men will just take what they want. And when she reaches the age to be married, we have kings, we have heroes, we have princes, we have regular people, we have Odysseus, Ajax, we have Diomedes, Agamemnon, Menelaus. They all come to get the hand of the most beautiful girl in the world.
Several of these were already married at the time, right?
Some men were, but having a second wife wasn't like an unheard of thing.
Particularly if they have divine blood.
Yeah. So every suitor brought with them gifts, and King Tyndareus grew more and more worried as the number of men in his hall grew. Don't get me wrong, he was probably very thrilled to have his pick of son-in-laws, but he also wasn't stupid. If he gave Helen's hand to one man, the rest would probably see it as a challenge or a suggestion, and then there would be fighting and probably a bloodbath. Can we really trust men to be like, okay, she's made her choice, I'll go now?
Yes, they're all very sensible and always have been.
Okay, yes, okay, great. And, thinking back, he's like, well, Theseus just came and took my daughter, so probably some of these other men won't hesitate to do the same. While he was trying to figure out what to do without bloodshed, he was approached by Odysseus. Odysseus is the king of Ithaca. He offered to help the king with his predicament if he would persuade his brother to wed his daughter Penelope to Odysseus. So Odie was not here for Helen. He was there to get himself a different wife. Tyndareus obviously agrees, and the plan was sorted. All the suitors, including Odysseus, would make a solemn oath to defend Helen's chosen husband should any quarrel or harm come their way. So in this case, whoever is chosen to be the husband of Helen will be protected by everybody else. If anyone goes against that, tries to start a fight, tries to kidnap her, the others will come after him in full force. And this is pretty much all of Greece. Like, all the Greeks are here. So everyone is part of this deal. In some readings, Helen herself chooses Menelaus to be her husband, fair-haired Menelaus. And then what ends up happening is King Tyndareus abdicates so that Menelaus could be the next king of Sparta. So Sparta has two kings. One is Penelope's father, Tyndareus' brother, and one is Tyndareus, but he abdicates so that Menelaus can become the king. And in the end, beautiful Helen married Menelaus. Her sister Clytemnestra ends up marrying Menelaus' brother Agamemnon, and Penelope, their cousin, marries Odysseus.
And at least one of these has a vaguely happy ending.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like, wow, the House of Sparta is settled, the son of Atreus are settled, Penelope and Odysseus are heading off to Ithaca, everything's great. But the worst is yet to come, because give us a couple years and one would be stuck in the middle of a siege, one would kill her own husband in cold blood, and one would be stuck fighting off suitors for 20 years while she waited for her husband to come home. And you might be thinking, what is the cause?
Bum.
Well, one thing is that they're all somehow related to Zeus, which is obviously the first big red flag.
If in doubt, it's Zeus's fault.
If in doubt, it's Zeus's fault. And in this case, it is kind of Zeus's fault. Because as we saw from the prophecy in the beginning, he wants to cut down mankind in half, and he's not worried if half of them are his kids. But there is one story that really stuck with me. And in this story, while sacrificing to the gods, King Tyndareus forgot one wrathful, vengeful goddess. He forgot Aphrodite.
When it's not Zeus, it's Aphrodite.
When it's not Zeus, it's Aphrodite. When it's not Aphrodite, it's probably Hera. To be honest, half the time it's Hera, it's because of Zeus anyway.
Yeah.
So, again, the gods really don't like it when you forget them. And for the slight, she made his daughters twice and thrice wed and deserters of their husbands. We will come back to this curse later, but for now, we should know that Helen, Clytemnestra, and Penelope would all three suffer awful fates, but the curse of King Tyndareus only really applies to Helen and Clytemnestra. So the big takeaway we have in this first part is that all the key players are related to the gods. In part 2, we'll cover the House of Atreus with Agamemnon and Menelaus' father and how they trace their lineage back to Zeus. The Trojans will follow their line up through Priam, Laomedon, Ilias, Tros, and again, Zeus. Helen is a child of Zeus. Odysseus traces his lineage back to Hermes on his mom's side, and Hermes is a son of
Zeus.
So Zeus his little fingers are everywhere. Every pot has got a Zeus finger in it. And so does every mortal woman who's beautiful. But
I don't know why you're specifying mortal. He's definitely not limiting himself to mortals.
Yeah, but this is just like a family fight, basically, the Trojan War. Before we can move on to the House of Troy and the House of the Atreides, we have to find another descendant of Zeus and another one of his love interests. We are going to segue so we can talk about Thetis and Peleus. And really, I feel like I need to have like pictures on the wall behind me and like a stick pointing to them so I could be like, and he's related to him, and he's related to him. But bear with me. The website will have family trees.
I'm glad you chose to go with Peleus and not Peleus.
Yeah, the thing is with all of these different pronunciations, because the most recent one we've listened to is the Stephen Fry one, I have all the British pronunciations in my head, but then...
You mean the correct ones?
Okay. But then when I go to like look things up to make sure I'm saying them correctly, there'll be American scholars or American documentaries, and then I'm like, I get confused. So I'm like, which one do I say?
Whichever one sounds better in the old eardrums.
The thing is, I've heard Peleus quite a lot, but I like Peleus a lot more.
Agreed.
Thetis and Peleus, so we're going to stick to those two. So, to really understand the origins of why Helen ended up in Troy, we need to attend another wedding where another beautiful woman is being married off. And if you remember the earlier prophecy, the subject of our next section is Thetis. Thetis is a sea nymph, a nereid, and she had a very interesting past. In a lot of stories, she helped harbor the gods, like when Hera tossed her son Hephaestus out of Olympus, he was taken in by Thetis to the Isle of Lemnos. Or when Dionysus was expelled, she hid him in a bed of seaweed. There was also a prophecy about her that made all the gods nervous. It said that her son would be greater than his father, and that her son would either have a long, dull life or a glorious but short one. 10 points, who are we talking about? Think about a baby that was dipped in a river.
Oh, Achilles.
Achilles. Good.
Got it first time. You can change that in editing, right?
Post-production is not very advanced because Sparrow isn't here, so we'll see what I can do. And with prophecies, I feel like prophecies... did you ever watch That's So Raven?
Vaguely.
I don't know if that was a thing that you watched in England.
It was a thing in the UK. It wasn't the thing that I specifically watched.
Okay, well, I loved That's So Raven. But every time I watched That's So Raven, I was screaming at my screen, like, Raven, don't do anything. Like, your prophecy, like, that vision will come true because you're going to go through all these steps to make it not come true. But even when...
That's so Raven.
That is so Raven. But even when she tries to not follow through and, like, not interfere, the prophecy still comes true. But the key takeaway from the Gospel of Raven is that when you try to avoid a prophecy, you often end up making it happen because the prophecy accounts for the fact that you're going to make changes and like try to avoid it.
One of the most common, well, I don't know about tropes, but explored subjects in storytelling.
The thing is, in my head, if I was given a prophecy, they become self-fulfilling prophecies. But if I have a prophecy, I feel like everything I did, I would try to do to avoid that prophecy, and then I would make that prophecy happen because I'm stupid.
Well, I think it depends if the prophecy is good or bad.
Yeah. But basically, this prophecy made the gods nervous because Poseidon and Zeus were really into her, but neither wanted a son that surpassed them. Zeus, they all have daddy issues, but Zeus literally surpassed his father and killed Kronos, expelled Kronos. And he had even swallowed his first wife, Metis, after learning that her child would be more powerful than him. But that turned out fine because he had a headache and Athena was born, but she was a girl, so it was an alternate version from the Argonautica. Hera says that Thetis herself rejected Zeus because of her loyalty to Hera, who had raised her like a mother.
That definitely wouldn't have gone down well.
No, and for this, Zeus vowed that Thetis would never have an immortal husband or child, which is,
I think that's a good way of avoiding trouble, actually.
Not having an immortal husband or child. Be
Yeah.
like, they'll just die in a few years, these mortals.
I think a good rule of thumb is if you cannot be involved with the gods, then don't be.
And in this case, her prophecy was twofold, right? So not only would the son be stronger than the father, more powerful, but he would either have a dull, long life, which could mean an immortal life, or a really short, glorious one. It's really hard to know which one. So either way, the gods backed off on trying to marry her themselves. But naturally, they also had to make sure she didn't marry someone great, because there are lots of heroes running around, and they don't really want her to end up with someone who's going to end up going against them at some point. Cue Percy Jackson theme music.
I was about to say the exact same thing.
Yes. We can talk about Percy Jackson later, because I do want to talk about Percy Jackson later, but they don't want her to end up with a child who is powerful. And so they find the perfect, harmless man for her, Peleus. And Peleus is messy. He's not exactly great as heroes go. His story is full of accidental murder, which happened twice, which, by the second time it's a little bit like, all right.
2 nickels, stranger happened twice, all that.
Yeah, exile twice, false rape allegations, revenge, the works. So he is the son of Achaeus and a grandson to Zeus. So again, the Zeus connection. When he was a child, him and his brother Telamon accidentally killed their half-brother and had to flee to another city to be cleansed of their sins by a ruler. So this is basically a rite where if you commit kin-killing or a particularly heinous murder, you need to be purified of the pollution. We see this with Heracles. When he is sent into one of his rages by Hera and he ends up killing his wife and his kids, he has to go and do the 12 labors before the king will cleanse him of the crime. And it's mainly rulers that do this, and so Telamon goes off separately, and he eventually joins up with Heracles, ironically. And we'll get to Telamon later, because he'll show up again in part 2 in Troy.
In the next set of side quests.
But we cannot talk about Telamon and still keep this episode under an hour. So Telamon is going to be part of part 2 where we talk about Troy.
Side quest 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, I mean, we're already on a side quest. Like, we've already left Helen. She's in Sparta with her husband and her daughter Hermione, and we're off somewhere else now. So Telamon went off and he did his own side quest. Meanwhile, Peleus went to Phthia, where he was purified, and then, because why not, the king married him to his daughter Antigone. Because, someone comes to your land and is like, hey, I killed my half-brother, could you purify me? You're like, yeah, you seem like a great person.
Absolutely perfect suitor material.
Absolutely perfect suitor. I have a daughter, you want to just marry her? So, cleansed and free of their crime, the 2 brothers joined Jason and the Argonauts on the hunt for the Golden Fleece. And later they also joined the Caledonian boar hunt. We will not get into Jason and the Argonauts because Jason also sucks, but Jason also sucks, but he's a completely different story. And Castor and Pollux are also on the Argonauts, so Helen's 2 brothers are also on this trip. The Caledonian boar hunt. We have Heracles that was there in some cases. We have Castor Pollux.
Menelaus, they were involved in at least some of them, right?
I don't know if Agamemnon and Menelaus were part of the Caledonian boar hunt, but we do have Peleus, Jason, Heracles, and we have Peleus' father-in-law, who also happens to be there. But if you want to hear more about the actual boar hunt, which is really interesting, and the story of Atalanta, then I will link that in our show notes because we do have an episode on that. But back to Peleus. During the boar hunt, he accidentally kills his father-in-law.
Number 1 of the accidental murders?
Oh, this is number 2. He's already killed his half-brother.
Oh, yeah, true.
So he killed, accidentally here. I'm using the word very liberally with lots of air quotes.
I see. Possibly used as cover to...
Possibly not accidental, maybe accidental. He's like, whoops, where's the boar? I couldn't see it. I accidentally shot my father-in-law.
A fine example of the Greek hero's ethics once again.
Yeah. In this case, I feel like the father-in-law is kind of accidental because what does he have to gain from it? He's not going to become the king.
Well, to find out, we'd have to go on several more side quests.
Yes. Thankfully, we are going to talk about this side quest because now that he's killed his father-in-law and he's committed kin killing once again, he has to flee to another city to be purified by another ruler. And this time...
Does he accidentally marry someone again this time?
No. So he ends up in Iolcus. And here he is... he's still married to Antigone, but the king's wife falls in love with him.
Of course.
And tries to get him all alone. And this is the shocking thing. Peleus says no. He's like, I have a wife. Which has never stopped any Greek hero or any Greek god or anyone ever before.
That might be the first time this ever happened in the history of Greek mythology.
Yeah, even Odysseus, who gets a wife guy, even he, took some liberties. But Peleus apparently was like, killing my half-brother, not a problem. Killing my father-in-law, but sleeping with this random queen, not into it. I have a wife. She does not take this well. And she goes in the same kind of way that, I don't know if you remember from the heroes, they're like this idea that the wife who's scorned by a lover will then go to make fake rape allegations.
Yeah.
So that's what she does. But she takes it a step further. She sends a letter to Peleus' wife Antigone and tells Antigone that Peleus has forgotten all about her and was going to marry someone else in their kingdom. After hearing this news and, her father had just died, Antigone hangs herself. But that's not enough for the queen. She also tells her husband that Peleus tried to rape her and that they need to take revenge on him. So the king takes Peleus on this fake hunt and he plans to leave him in a location where there are centaurs, but Peleus manages to escape. He comes back and destroys the city and kills the queen.
She would fit right in with the Olympians.
Yeah, I feel like everyone fits in with the Olympians. Everyone's doing the most. But this is the man who Zeus and Poseidon are like, that is the man for Thetis.
Huh.
Yes. As you can see, being greater than him literally just means...
Don't accidentally kill several members of your family.
Yeah. Which, to be honest, Zeus and Poseidon are probably like, that's fine. If you accidentally kill your son.
Well, they've done it on purpose multiple times, so yeah, who are they to judge?
Yeah. The only flaw in their plan was that Thetis did not want to marry Peleus. And so the story ends because they respect her wishes, leave her alone, and find someone else to bother.
No, they don't.
That's not how it ends.
No, they don't.
They do not do this. Instead, there was a war to be had. So they instructed Peleus to find her while she was sleeping, hold on tight to her no matter what shape she took to escape, and afterwards she'd probably be worn down enough that she'd agree to marry him.
That's not okay.
No. But we see this quite often. We see this with the Old Man of the Sea. We see this actually in the story that we told of Orpheus and Eurydice. The man, the beekeeping god, when he killed Eurydice, he was basically haunted and he had to try and figure out how to get rid of his curse. And he had to go and find the Old Man of the Sea and basically hold him through all the different shapes before he would tell him, like, oh, you're cursed because you caused Eurydice's death, buddy. And he goes, what? I was just trying to rape her. Yeah, I mean, that story is also crazy. But, and then earlier we saw Nemesis turn into all the different shapes to get away from Zeus. So metamorphosis is a big theme. And it's also why Ovid's texts are called the Metamorphoses, because people shapeshift into everything, willingly and unwillingly.
A lot less metaphorical than you'd expect in these as well.
Yes. I mean, we could use some more metaphorical growth, maybe here or there, but we never get that one. So they instruct him to find her, hold on to her, and eventually he'll wear her down. And it works. She agrees to marry him after trying to get away by turning into a lioness, a serpent, flame, and even water. And this is how you want great love stories, right? Like, oh, I tried to get away from your dad, but he held on tight.
How do you hold on to fire and water?
With great difficulty. But
Is he the original Avatar?
I'm assuming like she turned into like a ball of fire or something, and he had to hold on tight even though it burned him. And then when she turned to water, I think he had to like cup it. But whatever the story is, it worked. All the Olympians came to celebrate their wedding on Mount Pelion, all except one, Eris, the goddess of discord, who had not been invited. And not just forgotten. Under Zeus's instructions, Hermes actually bars her way in when she does arrive. So
almost
it was
like he wanted problems.
Yeah, almost like he's like, we need discord. Let's get the goddess of discord in here.
No, let's not let her in here.
Oh, yeah.
Let's cause problems.
Yes, more problems. Either way, she shows up to this wedding where everyone else is, and in her hand she had a gift. And you would think, wow, a gift, probably for the couple. No.
You'd only think that if you'd never heard anything about the Greek gods ever.
Yes. So you would think, a gift for the couple, maybe she's going to give them like a Sleeping Beauty style curse where she curses their child. No, she has a golden apple, and on the golden apple, there are the words, "to the fairest." Now, we did cut an entire section about this golden apple. We spent so long talking about it that I was like, it was a completely different segue on golden apples in Greek mythology, on this golden apple, if it even said "to the fairest," if she was even there in the first place, if someone else threw this apple. But we cannot do all of that. So for our retelling, there is an apple. It says "to the fairest." Okay. However, the one thing I will say is the golden apple is thought to be a later invention. Earlier texts don't usually mention this apple. And actually, what the Iliad and the Odyssey are not, if you've never read them before, they do not go into these stories. These stories are folklore texts or folklore characters that existed before the Iliad and the Odyssey, and so Homer would have been aware of them, and the audience of Homer's audience would have been aware of them before. Because a lot of this stuff is only mentioned very briefly. Even in the Cyrpia, it's mentioned a little bit, but all of this is from different sources, different playwrights who had written all over the centuries. So there is no one version of this story. But despite its origins, she throws this apple into the middle of the room and says, "for the fairest."
So without an apple in some tellings, how is this discord about who the fairest is started?
So in some, it's literally just a fight, like a discourse over, I'm more powerful, I'm better.
Okay. Oddly simple for the Greeks, that one.
I mean, in some cases, it's just the implication of who's better, which could lead to blows. Yeah, because it's the Greek gods, and they fought over less. In some cases, it's like a simmering of all these different tensions between the Greek gods and goddesses. But for our case, there's an apple. And you would think, at a wedding, the bride would get the golden apple that says "to the fairest." Instead, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite all start arguing for it. And each of them are arguing that they're the fairest. We have Queen of the Heavens, Hera. And what's really interesting to me about Hera being fighting about this apple is she has an entire tree of golden apples.
But do they say to the fairest on them?
They do not. They're apples that grant you immortality. They are
Who cares about immortality when you could be the fairest?
So these are the Hesperides. So there's these Hesperides are nymphs that guard this tree with golden apples. There's a dragon that guards her tree. In one of his quests, Heracles has to go and get an apple from this tree. So she's got golden apples. Athena also throws her hat in the ring. She also is considered, well, I'm the fairest. And there is some contention on, because Athena is not generally seen as one of like the goddesses of like beauty or things like that. But the fairest could also mean to like the judgmental fairest. And so you could read it that way, like she wanted it to be that. Because it's not to the most beautiful, it's to the fairest. And so Athena, being the goddess of knowledge, would be like, well, that's me.
Also, when compared to Aphrodite and Hera, most people are more reasonable.
Yeah.
With the possible exception of Zeus.
I mean, Aphrodite in this case is kind of like, I'm not quite sure why we're fighting. I'm the literal goddess of beauty. Like, who else? So all three women turn to Zeus. And Zeus is like, I am not touching this with a 10-foot pole. There's my wife, my daughter, and someone who's potentially my daughter, potentially not my daughter, potentially my sister. Because Aphrodite's origins are a whole other side quest we won't get into. But Aphrodite is not someone that you want against you. She has so many wrathful myths and stories about her, including this one. So let's not get into Aphrodite. But they're all upset. They all want someone to be chosen. And so Zeus tells them that Hermes is going to take them to find one who's worthy of passing judgment. You might be thinking, how does this lead us back to Helen? Well, the marriage of Thetis and Peleus leads to the birth of the hero Achilles, who would be the greatest Greek hero during the war. And also, through his father, he would be related to Zeus. Again. Then there is the matter of this golden apple and who is going to pass judgment on the three goddesses. And this is going to be considered the catalyst of the Trojan War, because the one they choose to pass judgment is none other than Paris, the cursed prince of Troy. And we're going to end this episode here, because before we can talk about Paris, we have to talk about his father, his grandfather. We have to talk about his relationship with Heracles.
Several more side quests to go
so
yet.
Before we can even get to the judgment of Paris, which again, the judgment of Paris is not in the Iliad. The judgment of Paris is all pre-Homeric information. Also, as we will find out later on, this man does not have good judgment, so it was a doomed choice from the start. No, I mean, there's so, like, we hate everybody. I feel like Paris is a bad person, Agamemnon's a bad person, Menelaus is a bad person. Most of the heroes are not great people. Achilles, I mean, I do understand Achilles. That was the section on Helen's origins, a little bit about Clytemnestra. Then we've segued over to Thetis and Peleus and about this second prophecy. Because remember in the beginning we said there were two prophecies. One was about Thetis and one was about Helen. Helen and Achilles are arguably the two most divine mortals, or immortals in some cases, depending on which reading. But they are the two most divine beings that are not gods in the Iliad and the Odyssey. We have the opening prophecies that kind of set the stage for the war. Next episode, we're going to go into the curse of the line of Priam. So everything that's happened to his family, again, related to Zeus. Everything that's happened to the Atreides, the line of, again, from Zeus, and how they both connect into what is a generational warfare for the end of the Greeks. So what you're saying is we'll learn how the fight between Zeus and Zeus ends then? Yes, and this is why I wanted to talk a little bit about Percy Jackson, because, I mean, the books obviously are very different from the TV show, but the idea that the big three have made a prophecy to stop having children makes so much sense to me, because like half of the time it's their own children fighting each other. The only problem with it is, of course, that wait, I don't know how much spoilers matter here. If you don't want to get spoiled, stop listening. But, wait. Oh my goodness, I forgot his name. Underworld god. Hades. Hades having children actually takes away from one of his most redeeming qualities,
which is that he actually was not unfaithful to his wife in most Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Whereas in Percy Jackson, he is. You know, it's not a very big deal for Olympians, but it's still a shame that one of the most redeeming qualities he has is removed in that. But still a great story.
Yeah, it's kind of like when we talk about the Greek myths, Ares comes up a lot. We don't see stories of Ares raping people or abducting people or anything. I mean, to be fair, he's
too busy causing murders.
Well, I mean, I was about to say he is causing murder, but he also is attached to Aphrodite, another goddess of war and beauty and love.
Although that is also a problem because Aphrodite is married to Hephaestus.
Yeah, but like adultery is fine if it's one person. Like we're talking about the Greek gods here, okay? The bar is really low. Are you cheating on more people like with? I feel like I was about to say, are you cheating on with more than one person? I'm like, okay, Zeus already, like that's too, we need to go a little bit higher. So that's where we'll leave it here. But before we go, Mr. Fox Squirrel, what are your thoughts so far?
Well, after having learned about the dangers of transformation in Greek myths, I might just turn back into a human and stay that way.
Yes, I mean, you don't want to lay any eggs.
No, I do not.
No, because, I mean, you might have a mortal child that's going to end up causing calamity. So, until then, if you want to hear more from us, until our next episode, if you want to hear more from us, then the best place will always be our website, www.talesfromenchantedforest.com, or on our social media like Blue Sky, where you can find us as @FromEnchanted or under the podcast name. However, if you are old school like Sparrow or Squirrel, then do send us an email at talesfromenchantedforest@gmail.com. We'd love to connect, hear your suggestions, or answer any questions.
And remember, there's always a place for you in the Enchanted Forest.